Hello and welcome to the Joinery Business Podcast. Today on the show we have David Carr from Cadmate. Cadmate is the Australian and New Zealand representative for Mozaik software. Now, Mozaik is a cabinetry software used for designing and measuring cabinets and running them through CNC machines. David's here today to talk to us a bit about what Mozaik is and how you can implement it in your joinery business, as well as his own ideals and how he got into this industry and what led him to working with Mozaik and creating Cadmate. David has a lot of really useful insights on the industry, as well as a really unique perspective on how to improve joinery businesses and what can lead to creating better workflow. If you have any questions about today's episode, be sure to jump on over to the Joinery Business Hub on Facebook. Now, without further ado, let's jump into today's episode.
Hey, welcome to the Joinery Business Podcast. I've got a special guest today, one of our industry experts that's come into the barn, physically in a room with us for a change, which is really, really nice. David Carr.
That's right. It's
from
good to be here. Cadmate.
Cadmate. Got to make sure I get the names right.
Yeah.
So welcome to the barn. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Bruce.
Hopefully you enjoyed the coffee. How do you like the coffee, by the way?
That's quite nice. Yeah, very nice. Thank you.
I think it's one of our chocolate blends. So Cadmate, wonderful business. A number of our members in the Joinery Coach use some Mozaik and connect with you guys. So maybe what I'll do, just step out of the way as I usually do and just let you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your journey, where you were, what got you here.
Yep.
Why you in the industry and all that sort of fun stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I've been in this industry since I was a first-year apprentice way back in sort of 2004 or 2005, around then, so roughly 20 years. I sort of started out as a cabinet maker, worked for a company in Smithfield in New South Wales that was like a commercial joinery business. They unfortunately went through some financial hardship and actually sort of laid off 80% of their staff and really had to wind back. Being the last one in, I was sort of part of that layoff as well. So I learned really early on in my career that you've got to be useful, and unfortunately, as a first year apprentice in a big joinery shop, most of the time I'd spent there was outfeed on a edge bander or picking up dust behind a beam saw, and you didn't really get much opportunity to actually be hands-on and learn how to build cabinets. So looking at a shift there, I actually went and worked for a small company in the same kind of area, but they were a very small business. They had like the owner of the business and I think there was a third or fourth year apprentice at the time. And that was it. So, it was a team of three with me joining the team. And, I think day one, the boss hands me a sheet of paper and was like, here's your cutting list, there's the saw. And I'm like, well, I haven't used a saw before, So, and he was like, oh, you're a second year apprentice. What have you been doing for the last year?
No CNC in that business.
No. Actually, had a CNC, had an old, very old BSE, one of the DOS-based BSEs back at the time.
Point-to-points. Yeah,
point-to-point. And he didn't know how to use it. It was just sitting there collecting dust. And that was kind of where I first got my, introduction to this. He was like, well, I sort of asked the question, why aren't we using this thing? And he's like, oh, well, I don't really know how to drive it. It's there if you want to use it. And sort of started out just line by line programming, figuring out how to write a program to, run a groove for an LED track or like a light track or something like that. It was very simple stuff, but it was line by line programming. And, I guess I learned to really write and read G code really well from that experience. So it was a pretty cool way to get into the sort of CAD/CAM side of things. I sort of pushed them to get into software, which they did, and then that really sort of helped me realize how important this was in the transition in the industry. So from there, completed my apprenticeship and worked for a couple of different places. And at the time, there was a company just started up in Australia, and Microvellum was one of the companies just starting up here in Australia, really, and they were looking for people to come on board and sort of learn how their software works and sell and support it and all that sort of thing. So got involved with them, and I was their sort of first tech in Australia and then made the transition from there to Planet, repping Cabinet Vision. I was their sort of lead integrator for a long time, and spent years traveling around Australia, teaching software and integrating that from shop to shop. So probably worked with thousands of different cabinet makers right across the country, and New Zealand as well. Yeah, and you do see a lot of shops and a lot of businesses, and from there, I started up a business called 3D Live with a business partner, and we were the reps for CADmaster software in New South Wales. So all that knowledge and transition over those years, roughly 20 years, led me to really look at what else was out there and come across Mozaik software. And for the last 4 years I've been running Cadmate, my company, which is the local representatives of Mozaik software. So
it's interesting. We have somewhat parallel paths.
Yeah.
That I went from business ownership to working for a few years with Planet in Canada. I guess one thing I'm wondering is, coming from when you went from being in a business, working in a business, you get kind of isolation a little bit. Like you go,
True.
This is what's happening in this business.
Yep.
And in those years, you don't really have the opportunity to see what everybody else is doing.
Very true.
I certainly felt like that in my business when you're sort of going, well, I think we're doing the right things, but I wonder what everybody else is doing. So then you went out, and like you say, you were able to go to hundreds of other businesses and truly see what's really going out in the world. Is there anything that you can think of that stands out to you of common similarities or things that weren't common? Like what stands out to you in those years? Yeah,
look, definitely, like you'd see the same kind of problem popping up in most places, that everyone was really just paddling to stay, everyone's busy. Most places, they would either have a guy that was the CAD guy, and the business owner would either be involved or they'd be completely out of it. And when they were completely out of the picture, then it usually comes down to, okay, well, who's the person they've appointed to run the CAD? Because I think what a lot of companies didn't realize in the adoption of software and machinery was how important that role was in their business, how much that person sort of controlled everything else that went on, and just being able to sort of see that in many different size businesses, and the complexities and everything that sort of evolved around that, I think was really, really interesting and eye-opening for me. It just didn't matter really the size of the company, what machine they purchased, what software they were using. The problem sort of seemed similar everywhere, really.
So I think if I'm reading between the lines here a little bit here, what you've discovered is a similar thing to what I discovered. Everybody was kind of struggling with the same things.
Yeah. Yep.
But the industry says we're unique. Our business needs a very different approach. But in actual fact, everybody in the industry is sort of experiencing the same problems. And
look, everyone gets caught up in the theory that their business is very custom and unique.
Yes.
And the word changes no matter where you go. Some people say bespoke, some people say custom, some people there's just different phrases for it. But overall, it means the same thing. Everyone sort of feels like we're very unique because we do it like this, and it didn't really matter, which way people wanted to try and be unique. The problems were the same, regardless of where or how it was done. So
I certainly had that. I mean, that's the thing that stands out to me is after a few years of traveling around all over the country. Back then, I was in Canada. But even when I did it here, and it still stands out to me how when we observe these businesses from the outside, we often think, well, they're just killing it. They're doing great. And then you get into the belly of them, and you go, they're really not killing it. They're really struggling.
And often the ones that from the outside you really think were killing it are probably the ones that are imploding the most from when you really get involved. And you'd sort of see that the bigger the company without the right sort of direction and management would just sort of, the more mess that was happening. And the more, you'd sort of see these companies where people would just be really trying to protect themselves, and it would be like a paper trail to, everyone sort of covers their own ass.
Justifying what they did.
Justifying. And, everyone was kind of nervous about, I want to make sure I hand this piece of information on, and the paper trail would just get incredibly long. You'd see it. It would come to the drafting team, and these poor guys that have to read through 100 pages of documents, like 6 different sort of versions or iterations of a client specs, and it's like, well, which is the right one? Making phone calls to try and figure these things out before they can even start drawing it. Most people would then put pressure on the CAD team to be like, we want to draw it faster. And it's like, well, these guys are spending hours before they even open the software to begin with, figuring these things out. So the bigger a company gets, the worse that problem gets typically.
So even today, you probably still meet a whole ton of new joinery businesses on a regular basis.
Yeah, look, it's very different for us these days because everything I do is really via Zoom, connecting with people online and on the phone. So I don't actually really get to physically be there and see that firsthand, but in a sense, we're actually communicating with more people on a regular basis. So
you're more connected.
In the one day, I'd be working with typically 5 to 6 different companies, and that could be anywhere across Australia and New Zealand. So, it's interesting from that perspective.
Yeah, we find the same
thing. You see more people, but you just don't see each one for as long or as detailed. So.
Yeah, we can fly from the UK to the United States to New Zealand and back to Australia all in one day.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. I love it. So I'm interested though. We'll get to Cadmate in a minute. And
Sure.
And all that fun stuff because I'm wanting to really dig into that. But a lot of our listeners are joinery business owners. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of value in hearing from someone like yourself because your exposure to the industry broadly is interesting for everybody to hear and really quite valuable. What we find is that there's still a transition that our industry needs to go on. Mm-hmm. It's often called the maturity of an industry or maturity of businesses. Other industries have matured fairly well. They've taken on lean manufacturing, they've taken on automation and technology really well.
Yep.
In our industry, we kind of have what we kind of haven't because we still see the industry has adopted nesting machines.
Yep.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
There's resistance, but now it's the accepted thing, and now we don't question it.
Yeah.
But we still see a lot of factories setting up every kitchen on the factory floor. Mm-hmm. So the question has to be asked, do you really trust the drawing? Well, the answer has to be no, because we're setting everything up on the factory floor. Is that something you also kind of question? Like, have we really accepted the technology, or are we still kind of half in, half out?
Yeah, I don't know that it's about accepting the technology. I think most people trust that the software has done the right task, but I don't think a lot of companies have the right trust in the people that they've employed to do the drawing. So I don't think it's really so much about the technology. I think it's more about still about the people involved. It's just a level of trust in people to do the right thing and have the right information. And that doesn't necessarily just come back to the person doing the drawing. It could be, like I said, the passing on of the information from the sales team to it depends on the size of the company. Yeah. And sometimes if it's just a small business, it's the person probably doesn't trust themselves because they're tired. They're wearing every hat in the business. And, when they're typically drawing these things, it's the end of a day or it's early morning or it's a weekend or it's an evening. And it's
2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. And, when you think of it like that, it's like, well, how can you trust yourself when you're not your best version of yourself in those times as well? I think there's definitely a level of the trust factor that still needs to happen, but I think there's so many other factors that sort of hinder that from eventuating.
Yeah, I mean, we see it so often where the maturity of not only the industry, because that's a big topic. The industry is not only here in Australia but worldwide. But we look at it business by business by business. Some businesses have very mature senior management teams.
Yep.
And you can see it right away. You can see the team coming together cohesively.
Yep.
And their challenges are often around marketing and other things. But more often the industry is made up of someone that's a good tradesman, started a business. And hasn't matured the way that they're running the business from a team perspective. So
that's true. I mean, you go through a trade school and you learn how to be a cabinet maker or a joiner or a furniture maker, and at no point do you really learn how to operate a business, how to manage staff, how to manage people. There's all these skills that you have to, as a business owner, evolve over time. And typically the hard part of that challenge is there's no time to do it in the sense that you are just, busy with the day-to-day, that it's when do you get time to step back and go, well, I need to know how to manage staff and I need to understand how HR works. And, there's a million challenges like that for small business owners. And I guess that's why there's a good opportunity for people like yourself to be involved in coaching role in this industry to try and help people with that side of their business. Because, although business coaches have been around a long time, having an industry specific one, I think is a really important thing, because it's like this industry is so niche. And one thing that I've really realized is like, the way we add value is through having industry experience.
Yes.
So, anyone,
for sure.
There's so many software companies, but like the difference is that if you're a cabinet maker, if you understand the industry, if you understand the problem that your customers are facing, you know how to help them. Because, we're not just showing them like, okay, here's the software. It's like, okay, we understand where you're trying to get to with the software. Like you're trying to run your CNC machine, you're trying to optimize that. We've done that. We know how to get there. So it's like we can help you with the software, get from here to there, not just, call us up, tell us what the problem is with the software and we'll tell you how to fix it by clicking some buttons. Yeah. It's like when people are new to the CNC world, they don't know what the right questions are to ask. They don't know kind of where to navigate. So it's sort of up to our industry experience to help guide them there to ask the right questions to get to the right outcome.
So tell us a little bit about your journey into where you are right now into Cadmate. What got you from wherever you were to this now? What were the impetus? Well, like, what was the turning point for you to start doing this?
Yeah. So look, the 2019 Vegas show, the AWFS show, I went over and met with Roger Taylor, the founder of Mozaik, and really interesting conversation, just understanding kind of like what Mozaik is and you know why he created it, and like his kind of, you know, whole goal was to make nesting or CNC cabinet making software as commonplace as a panel saw in a shop. You know, like every cabinet making shop in the world you'd walk into, there'd be a panel saw, or, you know, a table saw as it's known in North America, right? But the idea was to make software that commonplace, so it had to be an affordable option. It had to be attainable and it had to be easy to use, right? Easy to implement, fast to implement, easy to get started. And the whole kind of concept with Mozaik was to do it as a subscription-based model. So it was, there's a low entry point, you know, it's only a 3-month subscription commitment to get started. And that it's been like that from day one, because the 3-month concept is, you know, when you learn something new, you really need to give it a go for a few months to figure out if it's the right option. You know, a month is way too short. 12 months is too long to have people committed for 12 months without knowing if it's the right thing for their business. And it was much as a trial for us, our relationship with customers, as well as it was about the software. You know, it's about finding the right fit for both providers.
But subscription just seems to be, it just makes sense, right? Because that's how virtually all other software works anyway. You know, your accounting package, virtually everything is a subscription today. So
it's true.
It was that step that really everybody needs to make.
But this, I mean, Mozaik started at the Atlanta show, I believe, in 2012. So, you know, that was its first sort of announcement into the market, and subscription was just so unheard of back then. You know, this was sort of pre all these other companies like accounting packages and everything going to that model. So very new to the industry back then, where people, like you said, our industry is kind of like slow to adopt that sort of side of things. So, you know, and even today, I'll still have conversations with people about like the differences between subscription and a perpetual style, like, you know, buying software as a license outright, and, you know, the differences between the two, and the pitfalls of one versus the other. So, you know, and that's really interesting, because I think there's probably a lot of misconceptions in the industry around that whole topic. You know, any providers that want to sell you a software license will sort of say, look, you know, in Australia, it's like, you know, if you rent a house, it's sort of seen as like, you know, the goal is to buy a house, right? And that's kind of the Australian dream, is own your own house, don't rent one. I think that's used a little bit to try and steer people away from subscription.
Big difference though, isn't there? Because if you buy a house, it appreciates in value. If you buy software, it immediately is worth nothing.
That's right. And you know, that's, you know, my phone rings probably 3 or 4 times a week with these stories of people that have been caught out from that trap as well. It's people that are saying, look, hey, you know, I bought this software. I didn't realize that, you know, I thought I was buying an asset, and, you know, at the end of the day now I'm trying to sell it, and, you know, the next company, it's worth nothing now. Like, you know, the next company has to pay a re-registration fee to get it in their name, and all these kind of things that go on. And it's like, I think most people are kind of, unfortunately, just don't do their homework enough to know that, like, hey, there are a lot of pitfalls in buying software. And to know what you're actually buying to, like you don't own a share of that software company or a piece of that software. It's like you own a license to operate it, and that there's a lot of little catches within that. So, you know, just the subscription model really is a fairer relationship on both sides of the fence, because it's like, well, customers know, okay, you know, this is my monthly outlay and this is my, you know, annual outlay. And for a software company, we know then what our revenue is going to be, you know, based on retaining your customers. So it also means that you can scale appropriately, and you can employ the right people at the right time to help continue that growth. So
it's so true. Like I've been through that whole evolution myself. In 95, 96, I bought cabinetware.
Yeah, right.
You know, back in those days.
I used to integrate that one. So.
And we had the CD, and, you know, we owned this thing, and it was like version 3.4, whatever it was on there. And I thought, well, this is great. Now I've got the software. Yeah. Only to learn that 2 years later, I wasn't getting support, and I couldn't have the updates, and I had to buy the new one, which is another couple of $1,000s. And that's just the reality of it. That every year there's going to be a new version, there's going to be new features, there's going to be, and as a software company, what a lot of joinery businesses, I think, don't quite appreciate is that software evolves so quickly. Yeah. And it improves at a rate that is far faster than what a joinery business improves at. Yep. And if you get left behind with the old version, you are simply being left behind. Yeah. Because the software company is miles ahead. And you hit a point in a software company where you just can't support version 3 when you're on version 12.
Very true. Yeah.
Because we, in our coaching business, we quite often get a client that says, oh, I've got Cabinet Vision, you know, version 6. Yep. And we're not going to upgrade because it's going to cost me X, Y, and Z. You know, not only do you not have the efficiencies of the new version, but you don't get the support, you know, that you need. So
it's very true. And, you know, they also, I guess now they're in a situation though, in that sort of situation where things like sunset clauses and that have stepped in, and it's like, well, now to continue as a client, you really need to purchase that again. And I guess that's where we've seen a big shift in the transition for clients coming across to Mozaik, really, those opportunities of people in that situation where it's like, well, do I buy this thing again? Do I re-outlay all that money, or do I look at a different pathway? And that's where Mozaik really, with the low entry point, has really been able to capitalize on market share here in Australia, because I believe if you support your software well, it doesn't really matter how good your software is. To a certain extent, it's like the support needs to be as good or better than the software, and that's 100%. That's been the focus for me with Cadmate. It's really been about building a team of cabinet makers that are able to teach software, and it's a unique skill because it's you've got to find, you can't just go and hire a software expert.
Computer guy,
because they don't know how to build cabinets. And then at the end of the day, a client, contacts you and says, I'm trying to do this. And it's like, if you don't understand what they're trying to do, how do you
way more difficult. And ultimately they may never get there because they don't have that history.
Well, cabinet making's a 4-year TAFE course. It takes time to learn, and that's just to learn the basics, and then people, if you've been in the game for a long time, there's a lot more to it than that. So, it's easier to teach a cabinet maker software than it is to teach.
Click here, click there, do this, do that. If they know what they're trying to do, it's easier.
And that's probably the most common mistake I see people make when they get into this whole industry of let's say you're a cabinet maker that you're just getting into buying a CNC machine and software, and you think, oh, well, I need a computer guy. And they'll often find, okay, this person's the best in my business at computers, I'm going to get them to be the CAD guy. But it's like, often people pick someone that has minimal to no cabinet making experience. And, we find these days we're spending more time teaching people where to place a filler, or where to place a panel, or when a panel should run to the floor rather than the kick, and just, these kind of things where it's like, these are cabinet making questions. They're not actual software questions, but that's kind of like the mistake that often happens in industry.
Yes. Yeah, I certainly found that when I went into integrating software, because I'd been in the industry for a lot of years compared to the technicians that were working with me integrating.
Yeah.
If a client would ask a technician, here's how we do things, can you make the software do it? The technician would jump in and go, yes, let's just get the software to do that. And then 6 months later, it's no better than it was before the technology came in.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I would say, do you really want to do it that way? Or do you think we should question another way? But I didn't have the technical abilities that technicians had, right?
Yeah.
So there was, I remember that team dynamic was often, it was different because I wanted to know more about the technical, and they wanted to know more about the real life application of things. And making those two work together is really, that's the challenge, isn't it?
It's it's the challenge for anyone, even like for our team, when people get involved in teaching software. It's like, you'll have clients say, oh, can you make it do this? And it takes experience to go, well, yes, we can, but we shouldn't. And there's a reason why we shouldn't, because we're 5, 6, 7 steps ahead going, I can see the problem that's going to generate down the line for you.
Yes.
And it's having the confidence and knowledge and experience to steer people away from something that they haven't seen yet, and do that in a way that that doesn't come across as condescending or anything like that as well. So it's a real delicate, especially when you're dealing with people online, because sometimes those things can be lost because you're not getting, if cameras are off on a Zoom meeting, it's like you're not getting the expressions, you're not getting the meaning behind the message. And sometimes, and like we get customers all the time that ask for weird and wonderful things, and you think, okay, well, like, we can, but there's a better way. Let me show you the better way.
Can we get a CNC machine, nesting CNC machine, to do dovetail drawer boxes?
Yeah.
Well, actually, yes, we can.
Yeah.
But what it means is we're going to be mucking around manually for 2 days.
Yeah.
When that thing could be pumping out carcasses, and a more dedicated machine over here is going to do your dovetail.
Yeah, and it's explaining in that situation, it's like, well, it's nothing to do with the software or the machine, but it's the material that's varying, right?
Yeah.
So, and with the material thickness variation between pack to pack or sheet to sheet,
yes,
is this actually going to work? Sometimes it's not about the software; it's about having that industry experience to just go, hey, like let me help point you in the right direction here. Maybe this is not the right way to go.
So tell us a little bit about Cadmate. You've now gone from working with various different CAD/CAM software platforms, and you've chosen Mozaik as the one that you're running with. Talk a little bit about what makes Mozaik a standout in the industry. What are your advantages out there, and all that fun stuff?
Mozaik, as I mentioned, it's the most attainable product in the industry, being subscription based, and its entry point of price, but also the low entry point of only a 3-month commitment initially. So I think what makes Mozaik, for me anyway, like been in this game a long time and worked with various softwares, Mozaik's rate of development is the fastest I've ever come across, and it's been true for my involvement. I started back and sort of the transition from sort of version 7 to version 8, and then now we've just released version 13 last week. And the speed of that development and the amount of changes that have happened in that time is mind-blowing to me. Coming from other providers where, I had a short list of things that I wanted added into the software, and, 5, 6, 7 years later, I'm still fighting for, a few of those things to get added in. And it's sort of like software can be developed in 2 ways. You can have your own kind of roadmap and ideas of where you go. And then you've got your customer base's ideas and roadmap. And I think the thing that I can see with Mozaik, how they do it right, is they combine the two, and they really go, okay, look, here's what our customers are asking for. Here's what we know kind of the next evolutions in the industry are. Let's, meet in the middle somewhere and find a way to make that work. And what I've really loved about being involved with Mozaik is that they really listen. So, I have weekly Teams meetings with the development team, and we'll sit down and go, okay, look, here's what the Australian market's asking for. Here's what the New Zealand market's asking for. Yeah. These are the challenges that we're facing. What can we do to help improve that? And it's not just about going, let's just tick that box. It's about like, okay, well, here's the challenge, but is there a way we can do it better? Yeah. Is that not, let's not just, do that. What can we do to now do that, but more, and really take that next step? And that's what I think is a really unique thing about Mozaik, is that it's the power to listen to the community, but also power to sort of take that and really run with it. So, and of
course, you're here in Australia, so your Australian contingents or your Australian market has direct access to get that support, which is important. It's not coming from the States or someplace like that.
Exactly, yeah. So, being involved in that, we've been able to build our own local team here to support the market and and be that support training avenue for any of the Australian, New Zealand clients. Yeah. And that's really important, because obviously, the way we do things in Australia is completely different to the way they're done in America. Terminology is different. The hardware and the materials are different. Like all of it, really. There's the CNC brands that we have. Again, we've got quite a unique access to brands coming over from China that no one else in the world sees. We're an interesting market, I think, in terms of the world scale, because I believe we're sort of truly ahead of most of the industries in terms of adoption of technology in software. If you look at like the US market, for example, auto labeling CNCs are only really just starting to filter into that market. Yep. Recently went to a trade show in the UK, and they're really just at the transition from a panel saw to a machine at this point. They're sort of still very much beam saw, pod and rail, and nesting machines are really just new to that market. So, we're talking, we're going from auto labelers being old news to now like board storage systems and, next level of automation. I'm pushing for those kind of things to be, supported in Mozaik and better supported in automation around those things. And it's like the rest of the world's not there yet. So we're really leading the way in that aspect.
So give us, for people listening to this podcast, what are some of I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
You've talked about developments and new things that are coming in. What are some of if you can isolate one or two areas of development in Mozaik in the recent version that's come in that really stand out to you?
In the recent version of version 13, the release really centered around better tools and control around operating the CNC machine. So, implementing some newer things like stay-down nesting toolpath, in automation of remnants and, recutting of parts, and just really being able to improve the nesting algorithms as well. So what's really unique about Mozaik is that it's the only product in the market that truly writes its own nesting engine and the whole CAM side of the product. Every other product in the market uses even if they might own it, but it's a different product, right? So
that's true. That's the one thing that I remember when I became an integrator was you've got the software that writes the images and all of that, and then you have this post that is this intermediary thing that then has to convert the G code into something that the machine G-code understands.
Exactly.
So you guys control that whole process from start to finish.
That's
correct?
right. Yeah. And when you control that whole process, then you can really think about, well, what are the ways we can improve it and just simplify it. That's really a big part of the picture is like, there's no point having all these amazing controls if you can't deliver it in a way that's really easy to use. And I think for me, that's one of the key things Mozaik has done really well across the board in everything. It's really just whenever a feature is added, so much thought and time goes into like, okay, if we add this, how are people going to break it? First and foremost, because it's like, there's 15,000 users of Mozaik around the world. So it's like, okay, you can't just make a change and change the way if you've been using it for 10 years, and you can do it with your eyes closed, your workflow should never change. We should never make a change that makes that person go, okay, now I need to do it like this because the software guys have changed the way it works. So whenever you implement a new feature, there's a real delicate balance between, okay, let's give them something new without changing their
don't
workflow.
change the user interface, just change how it functions.
Correct. Yeah.
From an efficiency perspective.
So there's a real a lot of thought that goes into that, and we added a new sort of nesting algorithm that allows the software to nest based on the largest part being placed down on the sheet first. Right. And it's a really interesting way because the way most nesting algorithms work is that it's like, let's look at sheet number 1. We've got 400 components. Let's figure out the best yield for sheet number 1. And we might be able to get like a 99.5% yield out of that sheet. Okay, now we've got 375 components left. Let's do sheet number 2. Yeah. And then so on and so forth. And you get up to sheet 25 or something, right? And you're going, okay, well now I've got only these big parts left. Let's throw that one down. There's nothing else to fill around it. Another sheet, big part. Right. And you end up with, 6 or 7 sheets that are only half being utilized because of the theory is kind of wrong from the beginning because you're going, well, like, let's just try and maximize sheet 1. But in actual fact, if you put down your biggest components first and then start filling around them, okay, now what you've got is 2 things. You've got, overall, you're getting better yield because you're getting less sheets being used because you end up with less scenarios like what I described there at the end of the amount of sheets. But you're also maximizing your vacuum pressure because you put in a big part in with small parts and you're not getting full sheets of just small components. Yeah. And that comes from, I guess being a cabinet maker, noticing these things and understanding like what are the problems people are facing, looking at it from a cabinet maker perspective, not a software guy's perspective. Because if you're looking at it from a theory of like, what's the best way to optimize, most mathematicians that write this sort of stuff are never going to come up with this way of doing it. But it's like, this comes from looking at it from as a cabinet maker and listening to that feedback in the community.
And if software isn't
different.
Yeah. And if your software development isn't connected to what's actually happening on the shop floor, then you're probably going to fail anyway. For sure. Because people are just it's not going to give them any solutions to real problems.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, you sort of, I guess what we've really put a big focus on with our team at Cadmate is building a community, really. And one of the first things I did was sort of create a Facebook group for the Australian and New Zealand users of Mozaik and really try and connect people. A lot of software companies are kind of afraid of doing that from the perspective of like, what if, all your unhappy customers get together and start talking?
They're going to talk to each other. Oh, no.
And it's like, well, if you are supporting people well and you're truly doing that well, you should not have any fear around your customers communicating.
The community should always be a good thing. And if it's not, then there's a problem with your business, not the community. Yeah,
that's right. And you'll always get your outliers in the community, but overall, I think if you put in the effort to support people well, you're going to have a positive community environment. And that's really what we're focused on doing.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, we believe the same thing. Yeah. I mean, community is the most important thing. It's almost like when people join our membership, I say, look, you have the opportunity you've never had before. Yeah. You probably always wanted to knock on your competitor's door and go, hey, mate, can you tell me what you're doing? Yeah. And of course, you can't do that. But if we have this community of like-minded people who are actually saying, I'd like to improve the industry. Well, okay, if you do that, we've got to get other people together, potentially your competitors, and be willing to have conversation. But you're not going to flip your head open and give them all your IP. But let's face it, we're all building square boxes. And
it's a great thing for the community to come together in a lot of ways and understand that, like, collectively change can be implemented from those conversations, not just in software, but in the way people do business. Like, everyone kind of goes through the same challenges of like, well, as a cabinet maker, you'll go out and spend 3 hours of an evening designing Mrs. Jones's kitchen, and you've done that with the hope that she'll buy from you. And then she'll take that nice drawing that you've given her and the plans and then take that to 4 or 5 other shops and try and get a better price.
Doesn't make any sense at all, does it?
Yeah, like as a business, it doesn't make sense. And it's like, I think the more of these communities that exist and more people can come together and sort of collectively make a change in maybe the mindsets and how these things are done, decisions over like, maybe should there be a price for plans? Should you be handing out plans for free?
I think you bring up an interesting topic because communities can be harmful.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're what I call this mob.
Yeah.
And we do see these in some of the Facebook groups where we've got this group of people who are stuck. And they're justifying being stuck, saying, mate, this is just how it is. You just have to accept it. And pretty soon the whole group just accepts that.
Right, yeah.
And that's what a community can do in the way of damaging our industry.
True, yeah.
Where nobody in that group necessarily is at a level above them. Because the old saying is you'll never solve a problem at the level that it was created at.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have a group of people that are stuck at the same point, who's going to get you unstuck in that group? Everybody's stuck.
Yeah.
Pretty soon we just accept we're stuck, and that's...
I guess that comes down to the moderation of the group, isn't it? Like the groups become stuck, and it's like, well, how do we make it unstuck?
You've got to bring somebody in that's a level above.
Yeah,
because otherwise you're all talking about the same problem. You're not talking about the solutions. You're just talking about the problem.
Yeah, that's right. And if you get too many voices of negativity in any group, then the whole thing kind of goes the wrong direction. So it is important as a moderator to try and keep the conversation on topic, but also positive as well, because
that's right.
Like I know the amount of people that have said to me, like, they've learned so many things just from the Facebook group. It's crazy. It's just like, it's a free version of support, really, like for clients to get support from not just ourselves, but also from their peers,
Most people know that that's going to get them so far, but if they want to, it's the old saying, if you want to go fast, money is going to buy speed.
Yeah.
But you can go slow if you want, and some people do. And I think as long as people are progressing, I think it's an important thing that comes from it is that people learn in small doses. As I sort of touched on before, coming from training software for a long time and doing it where I used to spend a week with one customer at a time, face to face, and going through, I would see by midday they were just glazed over, at their limit of like amount of information. And that probably happened 2 days ago.
It's just like, there's only so much you can consume, so much new information. And it's so overwhelming. Like, you think about it from the cabinet maker's perspective, right? They've just spent like a month trying to get their factory ready for this machine that's arrived. They've had to think about power upgrades. They had to think about like positioning of this machine. They had to think about dust extraction and, electrical requirements, just crazy amount of things on their plate. And they had to try and clear a week of their schedule, which is, as a business owner, it's near impossible to do, right? It's just so hard to go like, let's clear out a week to focus on learning the software. But the problem then is like the machine companies there at the same time fighting for attention, going, look, hey, we want to teach you how to use this machine. Like, you need to learn how to service it, how to operate it. And then the software companies there going, well, hang on a sec, we need you over here because we need to teach you
we need to test some parts being cut.
And it just doesn't work. Like it ends up leaving anyone just kind of more stressed and more overwhelmed. And when you're in that state of like stress and overwhelm, your ability to retain information is just gone. Like it's the
slow progression. Like it's one of our favorite sayings. We play the long game, not the short game.
Yeah.
If you run a business, you should be playing the long game. If you're playing the short game, don't invest in a joinery business. Invest in the stock market or something like that can get you quick wins. The long game is, what's the long-term goal here? 50, 60, 100 years. We have to be playing the long game. And I think part of what we talked about here today kind of comes back to that, right?
Yeah.
The software investment. It has to be a long game approach, right? So that means that if we're making software and technology part of our business, we've accepted that we're going to be investing in software from this day forward.
Yep.
And that means updates, monthly subscriptions, whatever it is. It's going to cost you something, monthly, quarterly, yearly. It's going to cost you from this day forward. You're never going to buy it and then be done with it. It's
and I wish people knew that going into it, that it's a really important thing, because it's like, if you think that you're just going to buy it and own it and then never need to touch it again, like, you're starting it completely.
That's just not the long game thinking.
Eventually something's going to catch up to you. And typically, these are the things that I see. It's like, they're running Windows XP and, they bought a new computer and it's like, my old version won't run on my new computer, or they bought a new machine and the old level of software they have doesn't support the new machine. And that's usually the catalyst for a change. It's like, okay. But I think for me, like, I'd love to see the industry go through this sort of transition of maybe been a lot more focused around planning for these things better, and it's overwhelming when you're buying a machine. But I think collectively as consultants and people in this industry, we can help cabinet makers sort of plan for the implementation of CNC and software better. And that's something that I'm actively talking to all the CNC providers about, because it's pretty hard. Like, most guys are only subscribing to Mozaik a day or two before their machine arrives. And, therein lies the problem, because it's like, you've got the machine arriving, you've just got software that you have no idea how to operate yet, and you've got a machine sitting there ready to make you money, but you don't know how to operate it.
And it needs to be told something.
Yeah, that's right. So, I think collectively we can do a better job at getting people prepared for this investment.
100% agree. So I've got a curly question for you.
Sure.
I usually at this stage ask people, you've got one band that you can see, and you're never going to see another band for as long as you live, and it could be a band that's alive or dead.
Okay.
Who would you go and see?
Yep.
But I'm not going to ask you that question. What I am going to ask you, though, is you're in your car for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And there's a song playing on repeat.
Oosh. What
song would you be happy to hear for the rest of your life on repeat?
I don't think you could actually choose one, because any song would drive you crazy after so much time. But that's a tough one. Like, to answer your first question about which band, if I could go back in time, I'd go back and see Freddie Mercury.
The original Queen.
Yeah. Yep. You always see the scenes from the Live Aid. I'd go back to that and be able to be there at that concert. That would be pretty cool. I don't know. As in terms of what song I'd probably choose to be on repeat. You know what? I'll appease my wife and say a wedding song.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Bring back some nostalgia.
What is the wedding song?
It was actually a song by Beyonce. The song's called Heroes.
That's a great song.
Yeah. So
ours was by a band called Fairground Attraction.
Yep.
Back in the 80s, called Perfect.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, not Helos. Halo.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought when you said
it.
Yeah.
So
isn't that interesting, hey?
Yeah. It's she has a really interesting sort of take on that song too. So it's I think only music can take you back to a moment, and I think if you're going to go back to a moment, it might as well be a positive one.
That's a good. Yeah, I hadn't thought of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That probably needs to be my answer too. I think, the wedding song.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yeah. So we've talked a fair bit about how you got here. We've talked a fair bit about how you are right now. What are you sort of seeing in the coming 3 years in this industry is the most likely evolution we're going down? Because we're going in a certain direction.
Yeah.
Where do you see us evolving?
Well, look, we're at a point, I think, where people are getting a nesting machine really to survive and to keep up. Like if you're not operating a nesting machine, really, you're struggling to compete with the guys that are, right? So we're at a point where the companies that are investing into this are doing it out of need more than want, I'd probably say. So, it's interesting. I think where we're heading with the bigger companies anyway would probably be more around the automation of board management,
part
handling and software around that space as well, in the management of time, estimations, quoting.
So the actual business side
of things as well, I think is a big part of it. From a software perspective, I believe a lot more can be done in the automation of drawings and plans and presentation of that data. And with adoption of some AI technology, some automation around getting a 3D plan to your client in a format where they can be immersed in it. I think there's a lot of cool things happening in that space, and there'll definitely be plans to implement that in Mozaik and take advantage of that sort of thing.
For sure. I mean, AI has taken over the world, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But it's trying to find the way to use that in the most useful sense. Like you can implement it in so many ways, but what's going to be the most meaningful impact to your clients? And I think it's really about saving time, because most people that have used any software will tell you it takes just as long to get it ready for presentation to appease an architect or an interior designer or the end client as it does to actually draw it ready for manufacturing. So I think the getting it ready for manufacturing part in most programs is pretty well dialed and pretty easy. Sure, there's always new things that you could add and do, but it's around that sort of presentation of the information that really could be a great deal better. And I definitely want to put a lot of focus on getting us in leaders in that space too. So.
Well, I love the vibe that you give off around the business. The community is just so cool. Like I think when you have a group of technicians in particular, it's hard to get that community vibe because technicians by nature are very, let's say, they're not community focused generally speaking.
Well, like typically you could be pretty introverted, right, as a technician. So the thing that I've noticed is like, one of the things I've tried to do differently there in the industry is like hardware throughout the COVID time has exploded. Like, 4 or 5 years ago, you asked anyone what drawer they used, it was Blumentaro. Pretty much it, right? Like, obviously, you've got a lot of other providers, but like that was just what everyone used. And now it's like anything. There's just a crazy amount of choices. And every week it feels like we get a new request for a new one that we've never heard of. And so, what we noticed was like, as a software company, it's like, well, if you're just asking your customers to create these things in the software themselves, it's a crazy amount of work. And everyone's trying to reinvent the wheel. So our take being a subscription sort of service was that we could do that. We could make that available to the community. We could have polls on the community and ask people to vote for what's the next most popular thing that you want added into the software. Yeah. And we could do that as a provider. And that's really been a big shift in our thinking and going, okay, well, let's do that and let's make that part of the service. And so that's been really cool because we've got to see all these new things and things that we didn't even know existed. Requests come through from clients, and from that adoption, it's now allowed us to shift into getting on the front foot. So products like the new Blumentaro or the Headage product, the new free spin product, right, with the rotating cabinet, being able to be on the front foot of getting those specs and getting that product in the software just before it's launched, ready to use straight away. Then it's like that's a completely different way of thinking, and that's doing this for almost 20 years. Like it's never been like that. It's always been like, okay, well,
how do we
here's the tools.
To make it work?
I'll teach you how to program it. You do it yourself, and it doesn't have to be that way. Like if everyone's going to use the same like products, then why expect people to do it themselves? We actually pride ourselves on being a company that has no salespeople, and it's the same for Mozaik around the world. We've got a product that people want to buy rather than a product that we need to sell. Yes. And that's it's a very different way of thinking, but it's great to just have a product that you truly believe in and that people will want to buy without you having to sell it to them. Sure. So
I've noticed that. I was on a coaching call with someone the last couple of weeks, and they were implementing the pricing system, and they were going, well, I'm not sure how to do this. I'm going, you should probably contact Cadmate. Yeah. Well, let's just type into how do you set up pricing? Yeah. And you're right, your YouTube videos popped up, which was great. It's the starting place anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. And you look, we're not a business that tries to generate revenue from service. Service is a definite a need in the business, and it's something that we pride ourselves in doing very well, but it's not something that we are trying to make a business a living doing, right? We're really providing software, and the service is part of that software. Yeah. So it's just a different way of operating and thinking. But even the conversation around how do you deliver support and do it well, like I've really challenged myself to continually try and find the best way to do that. And that's a really interesting topic, actually, because it's like when you think about supporting software, like the old school way was someone would have a problem, they'd call you, and they'd talk you through their problem. Yeah. And almost guaranteed the next week that same person will call with the exact same problem, and they learned nothing from the conversation, because typically it was like, oh, let me log in, I'll jump on TeamViewer or whatever support system you're using, and you would just fix it for them. And most people would be, while you were on their computer, would go off and do something else. They were cutting something on the saw, they were putting parts through the edge band or whatever it was, and come back, is it fixed? Yep, okay, cool, thanks, bye. And no one learned anything from that whole process. So the way we've done it is Mozaik's got a great feature built into the software where you can email your job through to our support team.
The actual
whole job, all the data that needs to replicate that exact job on our system. So then we can open that in their environment, see it, and see what the problem is or how to get around it, or look at different ways of doing things. And we record a Loom video. Nice. Loom's a great service that the videos don't expire. People can download them if they need them. they can always go back and rewatch it. Really does a great job of highlighting auto generation of chapters, and great piece of software. But we utilize that now where we'll get their job, record on our screen with the audio of how to get around this. And it's typically a 5-minute thing, so it's quick for us to answer. But it's also the client gets to learn something from that whole process as well.
Well, you're actually solving problems.
Yeah, we're solving problems, but we're educating in that time as well. So that they're just learning, okay, cool, like next time now I know how to do this. And the amount of people that have said to me, oh, I went to email you or call you, and then I remembered 6 months ago I asked this, and I just went back to my emails. And it's like, there it is. Bang, I can see it again. Yeah. Cool. And people are actually creating libraries of these Loom videos. And then when they have a new client come on board, they're like, watch this first, And it's...
yeah, that's so cool.
The same with the online training. We do it via Zoom because it's recorded. People can rewatch that recording as many times as they need to, or if they get new staff members on board, they can rewatch the training, and you're never losing that information. Capturing it, I think, is key,
Yeah, and it's yours, so it has your own flavor to it.
Exactly, yeah. It's your questions. It's, it's just that's the part of on-site training that I always felt was lost, You'd have people over the years that would say, oh, can I record the on-site training? So, yeah, no worries, go for it, people...
In fact, you probably should.
Yeah, that's right. But people would pull out their phone and sort of hold it there, and then, you'd be 3 minutes into a tutorial on something, and their phone would ring, and they'd say, hang on a second, or, or someone's still recording with a camera or whatever it is, but the person's gone for 17 minutes taking a phone call, they've come back, and trying to rewatch that to as an educational thing is just, no one's going to go through 40 hours of content to get a 20-minute lesson. So,
yeah.
Cool.
So you've talked about the point of difference in the industry around Mozaik.
Yep.
And I get the sense that it's probably more around the ease of use,
the
features, the functionalities. Talk a little bit about the functionality or the features of Mozaik and what makes it, I guess, different to most others that are out there.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's a really key point. The ease of use is something that with any software, we have people transitioning from software that is designed more at the sort of shop fitting side of the industry and, can do really complex things, but it doesn't do the simple things quick and easy. And that's really a key thing. When people are trying to employ staff, it's about, onboarding software that anyone can pick up and run with and not take months to learn, but days to learn.
Yeah.
In fact, the average Mozaik customer that comes on board over a period of a year will end up with around about 5 to 6 hours of training.
Right.
Which is very low compared to most products in the industry. And I think that really is because the product is very intuitive to learn. It's laid out in a very simplistic way. You're working through your menus from left to right. Everything's where you expect it to be, and a great deal of thought goes into developing it that way that, when you're going to find something, where would it logically need to be? And it's a undervalued kind of thing in software development, is just getting it to the point where it feels like it should be.
It's so true. I mean, I see so much software year on year, new stuff coming in.
Yep.
And some of it great software, but just ridiculously difficult to use.
Yeah.
And I'm going, that's never going to fly. And the technician that wrote it's going, this is great. It's going to going, mate, I can't even figure out where to click.
Yeah.
And it's just, the usability is so important.
And especially in our industry, I really do appreciate that most guys in the industry, they come from a generation that was pre-computers, right? It was like, these guys are really comfortable on a pedal saw, but, a computer's a scary thing. It's like, I haven't been exposed to it. Most exposure I have is sending an email, and it's like, can I use this software? And I think that's what Mozaik does a great job of, taking that fear away, because I've taught guys in their 70s how to use Mozaik, and it's like, they haven't used a computer before at all, but in fact, I love teaching those ones because they're always the most dedicated people into, you'll show them something and they'll practice it over and over again until they get it. And it's, but it does speak volumes for how easy the software is to learn and adopt. And I think that's really part of the key. And in terms of the functionality of it, it's what's a little bit of a misconception with Mozaik, that it's, a lot of people assume, being a low entry point, that it's also aimed at the sort of entry side of the market. But Mozaik recently have released an enterprise level of the software, and that is able to, has really cool features around, let's say you're a company that does 30 or 40 room projects, and you get a call from the owner and they want to change the material or the hardware that they're using in that job. In one click, being able to change 30 or 40 rooms of information across like what we call our job dashboard, where you can see all that information clearly. So it's not just about quick changes, but it's also about seeing those things from a kind of like elevated perspective, where you step back and look at it and go, okay, what do I actually have applied? And you're catching mistakes in that aspect as well. Enterprise also gives people the functionality to control what level of staff can and can't see things, because as your company grows and you get more people involved, you might want to have like 1 or 2 people they're able to edit the library and save things and make changes.
And you don't want other people doing that.
Yeah, that's right. And that's just natural. Or you might have staff that you don't want to see the pricing side of things, or where the prices are set or how they're set. So you might want to lock people out of that. You might want to have people locked out of being able to send to the machine. So there's a great deal of sort of automation around that side of things. And then now recently in the latest release, the ability to do horizontal drilling and connect with vertical drilling machines and flow through boring machines, beam saw exports, all these kind of things. So I think some of the industry is like pushing more back in that direction of going like, secondary part handling and
the full integration right across the factory, rather than just the nesting machine.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a thing that Mozaik might look and feel and seem like an easy to use, simple program, but the flexibility is sneaky, and it's and that's a good thing. It's like you can still do any project and get it done, but it doesn't feel like you're using something that's heavy and difficult to use. So.
And it shouldn't anyway. I mean, even if you're running a $20 million business, it's very detailed and technical. It still shouldn't be difficult for your technicians to use the software, really.
100%.
Just because they're capable doesn't mean that it should be difficult for them.
That's right. And being a subscription product as well, like one of the advantages there is that as your company grows, the ability to just add another seat to your software subscription without having the functionality reduced.
Yeah.
One thing I love about Mozaik is that the additional seats, full functionality for everyone. So it's like, if your company grows and you now want to put a second person on, that person is fully capable of sending to the machine and doing everything. Again, that's purely because Mozaik is an all-in-one solution. We don't have a separate cam engine that you now need to think about. Do you need to buy another license for that cam side? It's all in one. So, which the simplicity of that's really hard to describe, but if you think of a situation like you've added a new tool to your machine and you want to put a cutout on a part, right? And you get that part. In most softwares, you will assign the cutout and then you'll worry about which tool's going to do it when you get to the cam side. Because it's all integrated in Mozaik, you're picking the tool then and there as you're actually doing the thing, and it's what you see is what you get. That's how I like to describe it, and that's a pretty cool thing, because we're drawing the shape of the tool and people see exactly the outcome before they cut it, and less mistakes. Helps people make more money.
So how do people contact you? What's the easiest way to have a look at what you're doing and make contact?
Yeah, so look, it's always via our website, cadmate.com.au or mozaiksoftware.com. So either way is fine. It'll all end up at the same place anyway. We've got a lot of content on YouTube, so
so you got a YouTube channel?
Yep, and a lot of following there. So it's a great way to see. We're very transparent with our information. So pricing's online, everything's available.
Nice. Well, this has been really good. I've learned a lot about what you're doing.
Cool.
Obviously, we've kind of been in and around each other a little bit with shared clients, but it's been really great sitting down with you and learning more about what you do. And I'm really looking forward to our relationship moving forward, because obviously our client base is the same. We're drawing from the same pool. And
100%.
I love your approach. I love the community approach, and listening to the shop floor is one thing, but doing something about it is a different thing.
Yeah.
Every software company listens, but do they do anything is the next question. So
100%.
I love the fact that you're actually, putting into action the needs of the shop floor, which is really, really important.
Big time. Yeah, for sure.
So thanks for joining us in the barn, and
thanks for having me. It's been good, been enjoyable, and like you said, very much a very shared client base. So the more we can work together with those clients, the more we can help kind of everyone achieve their end goals. Really
beautiful. Yep. Well, David, thanks for being in the barn, and hopefully we'll do a follow-up session with you again in a few months.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bruce.
Cheers.